You are not your thoughts. Today, I'll be going over all of the different ways of how your thoughts go into these intense spirals, why they're doing that, and what you can do to shift the way that these thoughts are taking hold of your life, right? Because when we think something, eventually we feel it, and that can create a heavy emotion or a heavy state or just an unwanted life in general. So the more that we are in control of our thoughts, the more that we're in control about how we feel, the more that we're in control with our life. And when we're in control with our life, life flows beautifully. So the first thing that I want to share is that most people think that their thoughts are the problem, right? And, essentially they kind of are, but really what is underneath this, what's driving it is self-awareness, right? The more or less self-aware you are, the more these patterns will repeat over and over and over again. So, the number one thing that is incredibly important for anyone who's trying to master their mind is how can you start to be more present and aware of the unconscious aspects that are coming up? So let's dive into this. This is going to be really powerful because we're going to talk about all of the different things that you most likely don't know that's actually creating a lot of these thoughts and what we can start to do about it on a deeper layer and how we can actually tackle it from the root to reprogram the way that we see and feel in the world. Hi, my name is Stephanie, and I used to have one of the most crazy, most intense minds ever. I struggled with many different things growing up. I had PTSD and lots of other things. I had a very dysfunctional upbringing, very traumatizing, and it led me to having an incredibly busy and a self-sabotaging mind. And I never went to a doctor, but if I did, I know that I would have been labeled something like bipolar or something like deep, dark depression, many other things too. But just to give you an essence that this is something that I've applied on myself and that, I can still have thoughts from time to time, but they're not these self-sabotaging or these negative thoughts. They're ones that I have more present in awareness that I'm choosing them consciously. So the first way that we can have these uncontrollable thoughts, if you've been through a lot of trauma, especially in your younger years, right? Especially from the ages of 0 to 7, like when we're in the womb to 7 years old, you're on heavy duty reprogramming phase. So if you have had, parents who fought all the time, right? That gets deeply programmed into your field. This is not something to be sad about because, you can clear anything from your field. And I know that from my own experience. But it is something to be aware of, right? So the younger you are, the deeper the programming. The younger you are, the weaker you are, and the more traumatized you are, the deeper and the heavier the programming. All that means is that you're going to have to work harder at doing this. You're going to have to work more consistent because trauma comes in layers. And the more that you work with these layers, the more that you actually get more expansion in your field. So if you've been through heavier times, know that there's greater gifts in your field because the greater of the obstacle that you had to overcome means the greater of the gift on the opposite end. And I know that from my own experience and from seeing that with my clients as well. Another way that your mind can go into these negative spirals from is from the solar flares. I've spoken about this previously in videos, but solar flares are these energy that's coming from the sun. The sun is shooting out beams of energy right now, these shock energies, these triggering energies that come up to the surface. And that can also speed up our mind. It can make our mind be in a little bit more of a loopy kind of circle. When these solar flares come through, they're actually bringing up unprocessed trauma from our younger years or from previous times in our life that we weren't able to actually feel or be with the energy. We fought, we froze, we flighted, right? Those are all times when we suppressed. Those are all times when we kept that energy stuck in our field. So when the solar flares come through, it literally brings up this unprocessed stuff, and we get to choose in that moment whether we want to actually work through it or whether we want to feed into it. And most people unconsciously feed into it. So we want to make sure that we are consciously processing this stuff that's coming up. Another thing that makes your mind and kind of go in those loopy cycles is being the sponge, the empath. This is a real thing. So if you have open tears or rips in your auric field, then you become more susceptible to taking on other people's energy. Okay. How do you have more of these open tears or rips in your auric field? This is often due to trauma, whether it be spiritual, mental, physical, or energetic. You can have traumas in any area, and that can make you more susceptible to taking on other people's energy, right? And so that combined with fear is an excellent way to bring in more energies. In fact, the more that you fear, the more that you're going to naturally bring in these energies. And I would suggest to you, if you have more of those empath abilities. Now, I can only speak from a certain state of mastery. I was I probably would say the strongest empath you would ever find in my younger years. I was the one that was like around a group of empaths. I was the one that was taking everybody's stuff home with me. So, and it was like I couldn't even go to like the grocery store or, have a conversation with someone for 2 seconds without taking on everything of theirs. So that's where I came from. And now I have mastered that to a degree where I'm able to be around people and my confident self and go out into the world and socialize and do all these things for a good, 2 hours without taking on anything. And that is really like powerful. I can still be out in the world for 6 hours, but at that point my energy starts to really deplete. I'm just not made to be around people for that long, I feel. So, but I do want to share that because it's important that you understand where I'm coming from. So, with that, what I have done in this process is I have the more that you relax into not trying to resist this, right? We want to allow for the energies to move through us, and I've always found that the more that I fear it, the more that I resist it, the more that energy comes in. And we really want to try to stay out of the stories of the mind because if we agree with these negative thoughts that come in, then we are taking on that energy, right? We're taking on that energy. That thought is actually not ours, which I'll get into in a moment. And we're taking that energy in. So we want to become non-resistant. We want to become not in fear. And the better way to state this is actually through the power of acceptance. You see, acceptance is about non-resistant energy. It's not I'm allowing for them to do whatever they want with me. It's I'm in my power and I'm going to be as present as possible and I'm not going to be fearful and I'm not going to try to resist it. Okay. And then the more that you can get in tune with that, which is a skill. And you have to practice that even when you're around a lot of people, and that can be hard, right? Being as present as possible and allowing for the energies to move through you. And if fear comes out, you have to drop it right away. It's a whole process. And then we have the uncontrollable thoughts. And these are, or the thoughts, those little negative whispers that come through. So this might trigger you a little bit, but this is very real. And thankfully, as humanity, we're starting to wake up to these outside forces. It's starting to become more aware. I've spoken about this for many years, but the outside forces are entities, and there can be good entities and there can be not so good entities. And the not so good entities love to feed off of fear because they are not connected to source, right? There's the not so good entities, and then there's also entities that have passed over that are, if you're already depressed or if you're not in your full power, they see a light and they come to it. Okay. Right. The higher you operate mentally, spiritually, energetically, physically, the less these things can actually even touch you. So they no longer can reach you when you operate from a certain level. This is what I teach all my students. You have to begin to work on yourself and eventually these things literally fall away. They no longer can reach you. Okay. The more that you work on yourself, the less these things can even come to your field. So, but when you're still in this field, you have a lot of these wounds, entities will come in and they will actually poke on your deepest wound. So a positive to this is they are showing you where your wound lies, right? Oh, okay. I have a wound that says I am not good enough. Where did this wound come from? How can I work on this wound in this moment, right? Feel it, process it, be with the energy, shift your perspective around it, see where in your childhood that you picked up this wound. Like actually do the work around being able to shift how you see and feel what is happening in your field around this situation. And so these entities, like, you know, one of the things that I noticed when I figured out the hard way that it was that the entities were actually feeding off of my fear. Once I realized that, then I started to fear about the fear, right? And so a fear about them feeding off fear. And so what I did in that situation was the best thing you can do is shut off your mind, right? And this leads me back to what we started at the beginning, which is, you know, the more that we begin to train ourselves to be more present in everyday life, right? The more that we can start to be present and we can start to, train ourselves to acknowledge how we're feeling and work on ourselves throughout the day, the more that we're going to be able to clear all of these different things that are making our mind be very busy. Okay. Other things that can make your mind feel really busy, blue light. Now, blue light, if you spend way too much time on your phone, right, you're doom scrolling, that is a giveaway. That is a huge one. That is just sucks your energy right in. You can feel like quite literally like shit after. It's really good that I have found actually that the more that I've mastered myself, the less blue light has effect on me. So there was a time where I had to stop using my phone and like barely could use it. And now I'm at this time where I can spend more time on it and I can actually do more things than I thought that I would ever be able to do before because I've mastered myself. And I do believe there's a power in being able to master yourself around blue light, master yourself around all of these things, right? These things aren't here as limitations, they aren't here as blocks. They're here so it almost tells us we need to master ourselves so then we can operate at a higher frequency. And isn't that better in the end, right? So, food, sugar, caffeine, these are all other things that can make your mind a little bit more busy. The more that we eliminate stimulants from our field, the more that we're going to be and more in our power and our presence and more calmer, right? In my academy, we go through all the different types of blocks. We go through all of the different things that are inhibiting you from stepping into the utmost, highest version of yourself. And when I say I was the most blocked version of someone that you could ever meet, I was that. And I transformed everything with a very particular type of self-mastery and a very particular type of formulas that I've mastered over and over and over again, and also a combination with activations, which are very powerful in helping to clear out these incredible these blocks that have been accumulated over your life and even others. So the more that you begin to be in your body, the more that you do, breath works or, whatever allows you to process that internal energy, all of those unprocessed energy, the more that you can be in the body and the more you can stay out of the head, which you have to train yourself to do, the more you're going to be able to eliminate these things and you're going to start to have more positive thoughts come through and more clarity come through as well.